In the late autumn afternoon, the slanting sunlight covered the bustling street. Charlotte still walked slowly, although old age had made her legs heavier. Her sharp blue eyes shone with patience, watching each figure hurriedly passing by, nostalgia for the past gradually filling her mind. The polished wooden stick in Charlotte's hand helped her keep her balance, while the faded floral dress witnessed the ups and downs of her life. Charlotte stopped when she heard the choking cry of a child. Looking around, she saw a little girl about 5 years old standing alone in the middle of the street, tears rolling down her chubby cheeks. Despite the pain in her knees, Charlotte bent down, her voice gentle. "My dear, what happened? Where is your mother?" The little girl, tears still falling, replied in sobs, "I can't find my mother. I was just at the toy store with my mother. Then I got lost." Memories of her daughter as a child flooded back, making Charlotte even more determined. She took the girl's hand and comforted her. "Don't worry, we'll find your mother. What's your name?" "Sophie," the girl replied, her eyes still brimming with tears. Charlotte and Sophie began walking down the street, asking each person if they had seen Sophie's mother. As time passed, Charlotte felt her shoulders getting tired, but her eyes did not waver. Suddenly a shout rang out. "Sophie!" A woman rushed over, her eyes shining with joy. Sophie jumped out of Charlotte's arms and rushed into her mother's arms. The mother, still in shock, looked at Charlotte, her voice trembling with gratitude. "Thank you so much. I was so worried I was crazy." Charlotte smiled softly, replying with sincerity, "It's nothing. Seeing my family reunited is the greatest joy for me." Sophie suddenly ran back, hugging Charlotte's leg tightly, causing her to lose her balance. The stick slipped from her hand, and Charlotte fell into a puddle by the side of the road. Dirty water stained her dress, the small tear making the already faded dress even more tattered. Helped to her feet, Charlotte smiled, comforting the little girl who was looking at her with worried eyes. Saying goodbye to Sophie and her mother, Charlotte continued walking towards the nearby park, but something made her uneasy. She touched her neck, and fear filled her when she realized that the necklace with George's wedding ring, a precious keepsake from her late husband, was gone. Her eyes blurred, her voice whispered, "Oh, George, have I really lost the only keepsake from you?" In a panic, Charlotte began to search, her eyes fixed along the road. That ring was not just an inanimate object, but a link between her and her late husband, a warm image of a past love. As the last light of the day faded, a young man approached, his voice soft. "Madam, it seems you have lost something important." Charlotte looked up, a moment of hope shining in her eyes. "Yes, I lost my husband's wedding ring. It is the most precious thing I have left." The young man smiled, asking with concern, "Is that ring valuable, madam?" Charlotte replied innocently, "Without any doubt its value cannot be measured in money, my child. It is the memory of my dear husband." The young man nodded, continuing, "Let me help you find it. My eyes are young, I think I can see it more easily." Charlotte felt touched, believing that kindness still existed in this world. "You are so kind, you remind me of my nephew," she said with a smile, not noticing the young man's cold gaze. "The park is dangerous right now, but don't worry, I'll protect you," the boy said, a strange tone in his voice that Charlotte didn't notice. The two of them continued deeper into the park, the boy leading her to a hidden corner, explaining that the ring might have fallen there. He smiled faintly, his voice soft but full of meaning. "You know, sometimes the most precious things are hidden in the most unlikely places." Charlotte nodded silently, her eyes scanning the ground for the glint of metal. "You're right, my husband once said life always has surprises when you least expect it," she replied, her voice filled with nostalgia. But a little worry began to rise in her heart when she realized they were far from the area with lights. Charlotte took a deep breath, trying to calm herself down after the shock she had just experienced. Although fear still swirled in her heart, she knew she couldn't stop here. Memories of George, the man who had protected and loved her all her life, emerged strongly. For Charlotte, the bag she was holding tightly in her arms was not only a possession but also a part of George, a part of the past that she never wanted to lose. After escaping the dark alley, Charlotte stood still on the sidewalk, her breathing still rapid. Looking in the opposite direction, the lights from the website store were released into the night. She quietly observed her reflection in the window, a middle-aged woman with a tired appearance, messy hair, a disheveled dress, and full of stripes. Tears welled up as she whispered, "George, if you were still here, you would tell me to be strong, right? Why am I so trusting of others?" But she didn't have time to wallow in self-pity for long. As the screams of the police faded away, another horny feeling rose. She knew she needed help, not just for herself but for her family. Standing in front of the jewelry store, Charlotte clutched her bag, running a little bit determined. She walked in, the bell ringing as the glass doors opened, breaking the silence inside the store. On the other side of the city, Elena sat at her small dining table, her eyes focused on the stack of receipts in her hands. Worry and pressure were heavy as she thought about her future and her son Timmy's. Tonight the phone rang in the tense silence of her small apartment, a gift that startled her. An interview invitation from Luminous Jewelry was the first ray of hope in days. Timmy was still sleeping in the next room, his soft breathing the only rhythm of life in this small apartment. When she put the phone down, Elena felt her heart light up. "Maybe this is the opportunity I've been waiting for," she said automatically, her eyes clearing. Charlotte entered the jewelry store with a hesitant look, her eyes lingering on the loose gems on the display cases. A young woman, probably the store manager, approached with a gentle smile. "Hello, I'm Maisie. How can I help you?" Charlotte contemplated the project for a moment, then said slowly, I'm just looking for something special, something that might give meaning to what I lost." Maisie watched Charlotte in silence, noticing the deep sadness in her eyes. "Would you like to share what you're looking for? Maybe I can give you some suggestions," Maisie said, her voice soft but full of understanding. As Charlotte told her story of George and the lost ring, Maisie listened intently, her eyes shining with sympathy. "I know how you feel. There are things that we can't easily lose, because they contain a lifetime of memories and love," Maisie said, leading Charlotte to the small and delicate jewelry section at the end of the line. "Perhaps you'll find something that will bring you peace." Elsewhere, Elena finally arrived at the store after closing time for her interview. As she entered, the warm lighting of the jewelry store seemed to dispel all her worries. Maisie, after chatting with Charlotte, turned to greet Elena. Maisie sensed the fatigue in the young woman's eyes, and she gently guided Elena to the next problem area. Maisie started with a few standard questions, but when she noticed the depth and concern in Elena's voice, she switched to a softer one, creating space for Elena to share about the difficulties she was facing. Elena sighed in relief, knowing that this was not just a job interview but an emotional conversation. When the session ended, Maisie stood up and smiled. "Thank you, Elena. I will contact you soon. I believe they can help each other." After Elena left, Maisie turned back to Charlotte, who was still quietly admiring a small necklace with a blue stone, which reflected the blue of Charlotte's whole body, whispering, "George once said that blue was the color of hope. I think I will take this necklace as a souvenir to remember him by." Watching Charlotte leave the store, Maisie felt warm inside, as if she had become a part of these women's journey. That night, Charlotte went home with the new, remaining necklace. Elena, when she returned to the apartment, had a new ray of hope for tomorrow, a ray of light amidst the daily challenges of her and Timmy. Eleanor stood in front of the Luminous Jewelry store, a strange world full of light and sparkle. Timmy was the only thing that made her resolutely enter, despite the self-consciousness that surrounded her. She took a deep breath, trying to reassure herself that she would do anything to change the lives of mother and daughter. The heavy glass doors opened, and she stepped into the luxurious space, where the soft light reflected off countless precious stones, inlaid with delicate auras. Eleanor felt like she was shrinking, lost in this luxurious, perfect world. But then she remembered the whisper before she left the house, "I won't let you lack anything, Timmy." An elegant woman, dressed in a neat suit with a pearl necklace around her neck, walked over with a cold gaze. "You're Eleanor, right? I'm Maisie, the manager here. Follow me." There was no friendliness in her voice, only an unpleasant scrutiny as her eyes swept over Eleanor's plain clothes. She silently reminded herself not to let the looks or attitudes of others discourage her. Even though Maisie's eyes kept glancing at her worn shoes, Eleanor kept her head high. They entered the office, a formal room with a large desk and a shiny leather chair. Maisie sat down, crossed her arms, and looked directly at Eleanor with an appraising look. "Why do you think you can work at a high-end jewelry store like Luminous?" Maisie asked, her voice filled with disbelief. Eleanor took a breath, focusing on regaining her composure. "I know this place requires sophistication and professionalism, but I can learn and adapt quickly." Maisie immediately cut her off with a decisive gesture. "Passion isn't enough, you know. We need people with style and elegance here, which I don't think you're suitable for." She glanced at Eleanor's simple outfit, a cold smile on her lips. Those words were like a knife cutting into Eleanor's pride, but she didn't allow herself to fall. "I understand what you're worried about, but if given the chance, I will definitely prove myself worthy. I'm not afraid to work hard or learn the necessary things." Maisie interrupted again, this time with a voice filled with determination. "Let's be honest, Eleanor. This place is not for you. Our customers expect to be served by people who fit the luxurious atmosphere here." Elena took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Maisie's harsh words had made her feel ashamed and angry at the same time. But looking at Charlotte, the old woman with the haggard face, clutching an old handbag, Elena couldn't turn back. She remembered Timmy, her little boy, and felt her heart ache with celebration. Timmy always asked her about the people in need on the streets, and today she couldn't leave without helping. Charlotte stood there, her initial vulnerability now replaced by a look of determination. "I don't ask for harm. I just want a little respect," she said, her voice running but determined, "and I believe I have a right to own this place." Maisie sneered, her eyes full of contempt, but Elena couldn't stand still. She stepped to the edge of Charlotte, looking straight into Maisie's cold gaze. "She has a right to be treated with kindness, just like anyone else. This isn't just a jewelry store, it's a place where people need to respect each other." Maisie rolled her eyes, expressing her disgust. "People are really complicated. But never mind, if you want to find the owner, then try. I'm sure he won't spend time with people like those people." While this tense conversation was going on, an older man, well-dressed and with a jade green appearance, entered the store. He saw the scene before him, Charlotte trembling, Elena holding her hand tightly, and Maisie with a disdainful expression, and stopped, his eyes sharpening. Elena recognized him from the newspaper photos. It was Mr. Grant, the owner of this chain of jewelry stores. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice calm but authoritative. Maisie's expression immediately changed, standing up with a refreshing smile. "Mr. Grant, it's just that these two, they're causing trouble." And Grant raised his hand, interrupting her. "I want to hear it from them," he said, turning to Charlotte and Elena with a gentle gaze. Elena, swallowing her anxiety, stepped forward. "Sir, we just want a little respect," she said, meeting Grant's sympathetic gaze. "Charlotte is here simply to share something after an incident. But Miss Maisie has been so dismissive of her." Listen quietly, then turn to Charlotte. "Is there anything you want to share with me, ma'am?" Charlotte trailed off. but her eyes were determined. "Mr. Grant, I've worked all my life to support my family, but now that I'm old, I have no one to care about. I just hope you can understand that, no matter who we are, we all have a valuable product and need a little compassion." Grant nodded, his eyes thoughtful. He turned to Maisie with an expectant look. "I don't accept the way you treat customers like this. Our job is not just to sell goods and money, but to bring trust and kindness to people." Maisie stiffened, her eyes downcast, not answering. Grant turned back to Charlotte and Elena, smiling warmly. "I'm sorry you had to go through this. I appreciate your assurance." He suddenly took out a small box from his pocket and placed it in Charlotte's hands. "This is my gift. Don't think that only people with money deserve kindness and religion. We all deserve it." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. She held the gift box tightly, speechless. Elena was also moved, feeling the true kindness of this boss. She secretly felt lucky that she didn't turn away and leave but stayed to help Charlotte. Grant looked at Elena sympathetically. "And you, if you still want to work, I think this shop really needs people with hidden hearts like you." Elena was excited, unable to believe her ears. A second chance, and this time she knew she would never forget this lesson in kindness. Charlotte faced Maisie with a calm that seemed to flow from some deep, inner well, her voice cutting through the thick, charged silence. "No, instead, all I saw was prejudice, written across every expression, every dismissive glance. But now, standing here, I feel compelled to ask, what does this say about us?" Maisie's face flushed a deep red, and her hands began to fidget nervously. She opened her mouth as if to respond but closed it just as quickly, the words clearly escaping her. Charlotte's gaze remained unwavering, her eyes a blend of disappointment and resolve. "You see, Guy," Charlotte continued, her voice soft but carrying an undeniable authority, "today I walked into my own store in need of assistance. A car accident left me stranded on the side of the road, and I arrived here only to be judged, dismissed, and belittled by people I trusted to represent the values of this establishment." The other employees exchanged glances, some shifting uncomfortably, a few lowering their heads in shame. Elena, still awestruck by the sudden revelation, took a small step forward, standing by Charlotte's side as a quiet show of support. Charlotte gave Elena a grateful nod before returning her gaze to Maisie. "You didn't think for a moment that perhaps I had a reason to look this way. To you, it was enough to assume and judge based on appearance alone. But what if it were you, Maisie? What if you were the one standing here, vulnerable, in need, and dismissed?" Maisie swallowed hard, her superiority now stripped away entirely. The other employees seemed to hang on Charlotte's every word, some nodding subtly in agreement, as if realizing for the first time the weight of their actions. With a deep breath, Charlotte's voice softened, yet there was a note of determination underlying her tone. "In this moment, what matters isn't the damage done to my pride. It's about what you can learn from this experience, what you all can take away from today. And trust me when I say the kind of culture I want in this company is one of respect, of empathy, values that go beyond jewelry and wealth." Maisie's head dipped, and Charlotte observed the slight tremor in her fingers. She could sense the walls of superiority crumbling within Maisie, leaving behind something raw and exposed. Perhaps, Charlotte thought, this could be a moment of genuine growth for her. Elena, sensing the gravity of the situation, added softly, "This is a lesson not just for Maisie but for all of us. It's easy to look down on others, to assume we're somehow better. But we forget how little it takes for our circumstances to change." Charlotte turned to her, eyes softening with approval. "Well said, Elena. Empathy isn't just a word. It's a practice, a choice, every day." Just then, the door to the store swung open, drawing everyone's attention. A middle-aged woman in a sleek suit walked in, her polished appearance in stark contrast to the tense, charged atmosphere inside. Her eyes swept over the room, landing on Charlotte, and then on Maisie. She raised an eyebrow as she assessed the scene. Maisie, recognizing the woman as a senior regional manager, looked panicked, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Charlotte. Ms. Clifford, please. I didn't know." Charlotte held up a hand, halting Maisie's plea. "There's no need for excuses, Maisie. What's done is done. But I hope you take this moment to reconsider how you see others. I don't expect perfection, but I do expect integrity." The regional manager, finally realizing the situation, addressed Charlotte with a respectful nod. "Ms. Clifford, I apologize for the circumstances here. If you'd like, we can discuss this further in private." Charlotte shook her head gently, her expression resolute. "No, I think it's important we all hear this together." She cast her gaze across the employees, each one riveted, absorbing every word. "I'll not have my stores represent a culture of superiority and exclusion. This establishment, every piece of jewelry, and every interaction should represent elegance, yes, but also kindness, humility, and understanding." Maisie looked as if she might melt into the floor, her earlier arrogance entirely replaced by a hollow emptiness. Her hands wrung together, and her lips quivered slightly, her gaze fixed on the floor. Charlotte's words left a sting, but more than that, they left a lesson that Maisie and perhaps others would carry for a long time. Charlotte finally took a steady breath, her voice softening once more. "I may look like a tired, mud-streaked old woman right now, but that doesn't change who I am. And one day, Maisie, you might find yourself in a similar situation where you are the one being judged." The room fell silent, the weight of Charlotte's words settling heavily. After a long moment, Charlotte glanced over at Elena, a subtle smile forming. "Elena," she said warmly, "thank you for standing up for me. For standing up for what's right. That kind of courage, that's what I value in my team." Elena beamed, a flush of pride coloring her cheeks. "It was the right thing to do, Ms. Clifford. I just hope we can learn from this." With a nod of approval, Charlotte turned her attention back to the rest of the employees, her voice taking on a firm, authoritative tone. "This won't be forgotten. We'll be implementing a new training program, one that focuses not only on customer service but also on empathy and inclusiveness. And Maisie," she paused, her voice softening, "if you're willing, I'd like you to lead it." The color drained from Maisie's face, but there was also a spark of something, perhaps realization, perhaps humility. She nodded slowly, her voice barely audible. "Yes, Miss Clifford, I'll do my best." Charlotte inclined her head, accepting her response. "Good. Let's turn this experience into something positive. This is a lesson that all of us, myself included, must keep in mind." As Charlotte made her way toward the exit, the staff parted, respect clear in their eyes. Elena followed closely, her admiration for Charlotte stronger than ever. The elderly woman may have arrived looking like a weary traveler, but she left the store radiating the quiet strength of a leader who had not only founded a business, but had also reshaped its soul. In the hushed stillness that followed, the employees glanced at each other, reflecting on their actions. Maisie, standing amidst them, realized that the greatest jewel in the store wasn't one she'd ever seen behind the glass counters. It was the kind of humanity Charlotte had just shown them, a gem far more valuable than any on display. Elena watched Charlotte step outside, feeling a newfound respect and admiration. Today wasn't just about standing up against injustice, it was about witnessing someone who embodied grace and strength, even when faced with humiliation. And for Elena, that was a memory, a lesson, and an inspiration she'd carry forever. Charlotte's words lingered in the air, an indelible reminder of the values she and her late husband George had instilled in their company from the very beginning. She looked around the room, her gaze settling on each staff member, a silent yet powerful admonition that the integrity of Luminous Jewelers must never be compromised. Her voice, though still soft, held a steeliness that left no room for doubt. "Remember," she said, "we serve everyone with respect, regardless of how they look or how much they spend. Jewelry, to us, is more than just a luxury, it's a connection to personal stories, to moments that define lives." Maisie, pale and visibly shaken, took in every word with a quiet intensity. She could feel the impact of Charlotte's rebuke, her heart pounding with the weight of her error. She hadn't expected Charlotte to be so understanding, so grounded in values she had almost dismissed as merely slogans. Now, however, she realized the depth of meaning in the company's motto words she had seen on every wall but had rarely considered. When Charlotte declared that Maisie would be transferred to a less affluent branch to learn empathy firsthand, Maisie didn't protest. She simply nodded, aware of how much she had yet to learn. Charlotte's gaze softened, and with a final look, she turned to Elena. "Please accompany me to my office." The invitation was gentle but commanding. Elena followed her, a mix of gratitude and awe in her eyes. Her mind was still processing the day's events, the unexpected kindness Charlotte had shown her, and the overwhelming relief of a new job that could change her life. As they entered Charlotte's office, Elena was struck by the contrast between the opulence of the room and Charlotte's current appearance, with mud-splattered clothes and disheveled hair. Charlotte didn't seem bothered by her own disarray. Instead, she took a seat behind her large, polished desk and gestured for Elena to sit opposite her. "First, Elena," Charlotte began, her voice warm and sincere, "thank you for what you did today. Your kindness and quick action in helping that child reminded me of the reason I and my late husband founded this company." She paused, a wistful look crossing her face. "It wasn't for wealth or status. We built Luminous Jewelers as a place where anyone could walk in and feel valued." Elena swallowed, feeling a swell of emotion rise within her. She thought of her son Timmy, of the countless nights spent worrying about how to cover his medical costs, and she realized she had walked into this store with little more than desperation. Now, sitting across from Charlotte, she felt a renewed sense of hope. Charlotte's voice broke through her thoughts. "Tell me about yourself, Elena. What brought you here today?" Elena took a deep breath, finding strength in Charlotte's gaze. "I came here because I need this job, Charlotte. My son Timmy is sick, and I've been struggling to cover his medical expenses. I've worked in retail before, but I keep getting rejected because, well, I suppose I don't look the part for a luxury store. But I've always believed that people are worth more than appearances. I just want to provide for Timmy, to give him a better life." As she spoke, Elena's voice trembled, and Charlotte listened intently, her expression softening with every word. Elena felt a tear slip down her cheek as she recounted her struggles, and she hurriedly wiped it away, embarrassed by her own vulnerability. Charlotte waited until Elena had finished, then leaned forward, her tone gentle but resolute. "Elena, your story resonates deeply with me. I see the same resilience in you that I felt when George and I started from scratch. We faced so many barriers, not unlike yours, but we learned that the strength of a person comes not from their wealth, but from their will to endure and uplift others." With a kind smile, Charlotte reached across the desk, placing a reassuring hand over Elena's. "It's my pleasure to offer you the position of manager at this branch. Your compassion and integrity are exactly what we need here." Elena felt her heart race, barely daring to believe what she was hearing. The gratitude and relief washed over her, bringing fresh tears to her eyes. "Thank you, Charlotte. You don't know what this means for me and Timmy." Charlotte smiled, her own eyes glistening with emotion. "Just say yes, and know that we have excellent health benefits. Timmy's needs will be covered." Elena couldn't contain the sob of joy that escaped her. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Charlotte rose from her seat and came around the desk, pulling Elena into a warm embrace, not caring about her soiled clothes. "Welcome to the Luminous family, Elena," she whispered. "I know you'll shine here, just as brightly as the jewels we sell." As they stepped back, Elena noticed something glittering on the carpet. She bent down to retrieve it, and her fingers closed around a simple yet elegant wedding band. There was an inscription inside, and as she read it, she realized it was George's wedding ring, engraved with the words, "To Charlotte, my eternal love." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears as she took the ring from Elena. She held it for a moment, her fingers caressing the inscription. "Oh, George," she murmured softly, "you always find a way to remind me of what truly matters." Elena watched her, feeling both honored and moved to witness such a private moment. Charlotte's vulnerability in that instant reminded her of the quiet strength this woman held within her, a strength forged through love, loss, and an unwavering commitment to values. Charlotte looked up, her smile bittersweet yet filled with peace. "Thank you, Elena. You've reminded me today that people's stories are the jewels we cherish most, and we must continue to uphold the respect and empathy this company was built on." As they left the office, Charlotte placed a gentle hand on Elena's shoulder. "Today is the beginning of a new journey for both of us. Together we'll keep George's legacy alive and ensure that everyone who steps through these doors feels valued." Elena smiled, her heart swelling with a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just a job, it was a calling, one that would allow her to provide for Timmy while honoring the values she and Charlotte both held dear. Charlotte gently clasped the ring back on her finger, her eyes shining as she looked at Eleanor. "You know, Eleanor," Charlotte said softly, her eyes brimming with joy, "sometimes we lose something only to find it again at the right time, with the right person. Today is a day of reunions, not just for you, but for me." The two women exchanged glances, knowing full well that this was not just the beginning of a working relationship, but the foundation of a sincere and lasting friendship. They walked out of the office, Charlotte still wearing her dirty clothes, but with a fleeting and elegant air. She turned to face the entire store staff, announcing in a clear and warm manner, "Today is a day of great learning and change. From now on, Eleanor will be the new manager of this branch. I expect all of you to treat her with respect and product, just as we treat every step of our customers in this store." Eleanor stood by, smiling shyly but not hiding her happiness and surprise. She could not believe her own campaign. In the following days, the inspiring story of Charlotte and Eleanor quickly spread throughout town. The local press picked up the story, turning it into an inspiring tale of kindness and second chances. Luminous Jewelers attracted a surge of customers. Many came not only to buy jewelry but also to experience the feeling of being truly respected and cared for. Under Eleanor's leadership, the branch began to expand. She developed new customer service policies that focused on feelings and knowledge. Initially, the staff was skeptical, but gradually they realized that treating each customer as an individual not only increased sales but also created more meaningful work. As for Eleanor's son, Timmy, he was medically cleared thanks to the new health plan. His health gradually improved, and Eleanor could rest assured knowing that her son was being taken care of. A few months later, the Golden Sunshine was modified by Luminous Jewelers. The windows revealed not only precious gems but also small plaques recording touching stories from customers. A new detail in the decoration caught everyone's eyes: a framed photo of Charlotte and Eleanor smiling together, with the inscription below, "Every gem has a story. Every person has a value." Eleanor, now in an elegant yet modest suit, strolled around the store, a warm smile on her face. She stopped to help a young man nervously choose his first engagement ring. Across the store, Maisie, who had returned from a temporary assignment, watched Eleanor with renewed admiration. Her experience in a difficult area had changed her outlook, and she now approached Eleanor and her customers with sincere and kind words, something she would have never thought of a few months ago. The store opened and Charlotte entered, dressed smartly but still keeping it simple. She smiled with satisfaction as she saw the transformation in the store. Staff and customers interacted with sincerity and enthusiasm, laughter and lively conversation enlivening the atmosphere. Eleanor, upon seeing Charlotte, apologized to her customers and walked over to greet her precious friend. "Charlotte, what a surprise to see you here," she said, hugging the woman who had changed her life. Charlotte returned the warm hug. "I came to see how things were, but from the looks of it, I have nothing to worry about. This place. This is what George and I have always dreamed of," Charlotte said, her eyes filled with clear satisfaction. Eleanor nodded, her emotions welling up inside her. "It's all about helping me, Charlotte. Your trust in me, your lessons in kindness and humility, has changed everything," she replied. Charlotte shook her head, her eyes sparkling with emotion. "No, Eleanor, you reminded me of the true purpose of this place when I needed it most," she repeated, her voice cracking with emotion. "How is Timmy?" Eleanor's face lit up at the mention of her son. "He's doing great. The new treatment is working wonderfully. In fact, Timmy really wanted to see you, to thank the fairy godmother for saving him and his mother." Charlotte laughed heartily, the sound filled with happiness. "How could I refuse such a tempting invitation? How about we come to my house for dinner this weekend? Maybe with the whole staff here." The idea quickly spread throughout the shop. Everyone was enthusiastically affected. Maisie, who heard the conversation, cautiously approached. Am I invited too?" she asked, her voice a mixture of hope and disapproval. Charlotte looked at her with eyes gently. "Of course, Maisie. This is family, no matter what the past." That evening, after the store closed, the group gathered to raise their glasses to celebrate. Eleanor raised her glass high, looking at the radiant faces around her. "To Luminous Jewelers, where each one shines brighter than any diamond," she said. "To Luminous Jewelers," everyone cheered, their voices joining in a chorus of hope and gratitude. When Eleanor returned home, she found Timmy waiting for her, his eyes sparkling and alive. She hugged him tightly, feeling a wave of gratitude flood her heart. "How was your day?" Timmy asked, his voice full of eagerness and curiosity. Eleanor smiled, stroking his hair. "It's amazing, honey. You know, sometimes life has the most wonderful surprises." She looked out the window, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky, each one telling a story of hope and possibility. Eleanor thought about Charlotte, about her own journey, and about the bright future that lay ahead. "Timmy, let me tell you a story about a jewelry store, a special lady, and how when you think all is lost, life gives you something more precious than any jewel." Timmy's eyes widened with excitement. "Yes, Mom, tell me everything." Eleanor sat down next to her son, her voice filled with emotion and gratitude as she recounted the extraordinary events that had changed their lives. The most valuable lesson she shared with her son was that a person's true worth is not in their appearance or clothes, but in the kindness and strength of their soul. As the story draws to a close, Eleanor and Timmy feel a deep peace and hope for the future, a future that once seemed uncertain and fearful, now sparkles with the promise of brighter days. All thanks to a chance encounter, an act of kindness, and the wisdom to look beyond appearances to see the true worth of each person. Under the starry sky, the little family quietly felt the magical power of kindness and peace. Somewhere not far away, Charlotte also looked up at the stars, her heart filled with gratitude for not only finding the precious ring, but also meeting a new friend, and a reminder of the true meaning of her life and work. Luminous Jewelers is no longer just a jewelry store, but has become a symbol of hope, a place where extraordinary stories happen every day, proving that sometimes the most precious gems are the connections we make with each other.